Good evening and welcome back to the Orion Report. Tonight's episode is False Good and False Evil. Isaiah 5:20 through 21. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and shrewd in their own sight. Romans 1:18 through 23. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God, or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Romans 7:14 through 25. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do I do not do, but what I hate to do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is the sin living in me. I know that nothing good lives in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do. No, the evil I do not want to do. This I keep doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within my members. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself in my mind am a slave to God's law, but in the sinful nature a slave to the law of sin. Note, through Jesus Christ our Lord. For a Urian, this would read, through the universal call and eternal grace of our Lord personified in Jesus, Yeshua. We live in a time when all divine wisdom and godliness is regarded as evil, and all that is low, vulgar, corrupt, and degenerate is elevated and regarded as the good. From times immemorial, across many different religions and cultures and eras of human history, certain things have been regarded as good, which are now regarded as evil and wrong by a growing portion of humankind, mainly in Western spoiled civilization, Europe, America. Even something as simple as monogamy, one mate for life, or avoiding sex before marriage, which was almost a universal standard of civilizations for millennia, is ignored even by the most religious people, and will indeed provoke anger for a preacher or priest to even mention. It was a standard laid down of old that faithful should marry faithful, that the sons of God should marry the daughters of God. Now the children of God routinely, and with willing insistence, intermarry with the godless, and even with those who outright oppose God and God's long-standing principles. Yet even that which is natural and normative according to nature's law, and the natural instincts and needs of the human animal, are in this era being cast off with disdain, as a bizarre, unnatural, anti-natural, and utterly depraved and vulgar ideal of what is good and what is evil is being embraced by popular culture, to the point of worshiping, by obsession, all that is outright profane and twisted and nigh insane. Whether the idolization of undeath, vampires, zombies, etc., and diabolicalism, demons, abominations, or the veneration of lawlessness and the aspiration to delusion and self-mutilation. Such is hailed as the new normal. In effect, a spirit of moral, mental, and spiritual lawlessness and civil disorder, the literal spirit of Satan, the enemy, is spreading and taking up residence within the minds and hearts of the masses, as if the shadow, Jungian reference, has arisen to swallow the collective unconscious of humanity itself, and a de facto satanic mentality and world vision has conquered large swaths of humankind already. This is what Uriel warned us about long ago, the descent into shadows, the coming 1,000 years of darkness, in which mankind will rapidly de-evolve into an ever more demonic and spiritually darkened race, until it literally becomes a race of unlife or false life, a race of so-called shadow people. God's view of good and evil, however, are in many regards very different from human definitions, because God always thinks long-term, big picture, and the greater good of your eternal soul, and of the good of the whole. As in most things, what is hard in the short term is often the best thing in the long term. Exercise is very difficult to maintain and force upon ourselves, as is just eating right, but of course brings physical benefits as well as mental health benefits for a lifetime. Spiritual devotion and mental spiritual discipline overall is very hard for people to maintain as well, but its benefits are far greater than that of physicality, welling up into eternal existence. Humans define evil now, perhaps always, as whatever is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or tells them whatever they don't want to hear or live by. Still, more than this, what is clear to me in the current era is that the human race itself is being manipulated, primarily by its leaders, those who are counted among the global ruling elite. Whether we call them the WEF, the Davos crowd, Bilderberg, Illuminati, whatever, they are set upon a course that is primarily about reducing population and gaining utter domination over the thoughts, words, and actions of the populace of the planet, dictating things for the majority that are not imposed on the ruling elites themselves. Bug eating, living without electricity, without transportation, as most won't be able to afford electric cars, etc. They mask their agenda under the guise of climate concerns, but many of their solutions to climate change actually cause more harm to the environment than they solve. And much of the science itself is based on intentionally exaggerated and even outright falsified or misrepresented data. Ultimately, they do not care about climate, but control, and have convinced a great many people to live in terror and thereby do their bidding in the cause of ushering in an age of oppression, turning well-meaning and sincere people into foot soldiers for a global neo-feudalist totalitarian vision. They hate it that people, the peasants, the common unwashed masses, have a say in anything, and that they, the ruling class, cannot just dictate and use and abuse us as they see fit. They have set out to create a future in which we are little more than slaves. We will own nothing. They will own everything, including us. Many of these ruling elites are outright atheists, after a technocratic fashion, but more than this, seem to belong to certain secretive social groups, especially Crowleyan-orientated, that embrace the ideas and philosophies that are outright or inadvertently satanic in nature. They seem to want to normalize a new narcissistic religiosity based on vain self-worship, idolatry of the me, as well as the acceptance of the most vulgar and profane things imaginable, from abnormal sexual deviance to criminal lawlessness and general civil disorder, even pedophilia and cannibalism. Indeed, they seem to want to empower criminals and render the normative and traditional, the law-abiding, utterly defenseless, giving the sheep to the wolves, aka anarcho-tyranny. They adore and will fight and kill for the right to kill babies. They defend child trafficking. They seek to suppress those who stand against it. They seek to legalize all that is destructive and outlaw all that is natural and divine. The COVID injections, spike proteins, started something, a basic change, separating the obedient from the resistant for one, but also at a fundamental physical level, a metabiological collective change. This is combined with the push to merge humans with technology, to take control of every part of our living and being, and mold our very thinking and feeling toward a worldview that is both anti-natural and anti-divine. This is the shift of the collective will and direction toward the dark road that leads humanity to evolve into a demonic race and transform our world into a gilded hell. Whether as a race of proverbial Borg or literal demon shades, do not be deceived. Information is ever more controlled. The media and big tech are tightening the screws, branding anything outside the agenda as misinformation or disinformation. They have weaponized intelligence agencies, law enforcement, against anyone who opposes them, turning good to evil, evil to good, natural to unnatural, the anti into the normative. Yet for us, we few, I beg you, strive each day to rise and claw your way toward the light. The material world, the future of mankind, is collectively turning toward the abyss. At present, focus on reaching toward eternity, reaching and wrestling toward God, on ministering to those closest to you. Prepare yourself for immortal life, because reincarnation into the future times, will be reincarnation into a far more demonic world, a reality that is on a downward spiral of ever greater separation from the ascendant realms than is now the case. We may be among the last generations that have any hope of escaping the permanent darkening of humanity, as society becomes ever more depraved and degenerate, evolving into a civilization of the damned. That's it for tonight's episode. Join me again next week. God bless you.